This is Sports Talk with Steve Jones, a Seven Mountains Media production, your daily talk show with the voice of Penn State football and men's basketball, featuring interviews with special guests. Here is your host, Mr. Steve Jones.
You're back.
I am back. I am back here in the producer chair today.
Live ad-lib intros.
Of course.
At you, getting it done. Let me bring up an interesting proposition that history can repeat itself.
Oh, boy.
Okay. Like, okay, what do you mean? I will take everybody back to the 1982 NFL draft. In that year, I believe the New Orleans Saints were docked a pick. It was their first-round pick, which meant the first round went 27 picks. Okay. When they get to round two, the 28th pick by the Baltimore Colts was Leo Wisniewski at Penn State.
It was.
And that's Steph's dad. Right? And so when it came time to negotiate, he said, look, there are 28 teams. He's the 28th pick. He should get first-round money. Now let's transition to 2023. Let's move ahead 41 years. The Dolphins are docked the first-round pick. And the 32nd pick in a 32-team league was Joey Porter Jr. Do they ask for first-round pick money?
I mean, I don't see why not.
I'm just saying, and it's interesting how history has repeated itself because it's a Penn Stater each time. Leo Wisniewski with the Colts, 28 out of 28. Joey Porter Jr., 32 out of 32.
I think some would call that destiny.
I find it interesting, and it's not as if Joey Porter Jr. isn't surrounded by people that know how the game is played. I mean the negotiating game. Next, Lamar Jackson's contract. Do you want to know how much money he saved not having an agent?
What was it, something like $5 to $10 million?
$4.9 million.
Not bad. Not a bad savings.
Agents take, by the way, people have always wondered, what is the agent's take? In the NFL, it's 3%. Right? So it's 3% in the NFL. Ended up saving about $4.9 million because there are other things you've got to put money toward, out of it. He ended up saving about $4.9 million. And ended up with a deal like that, which is 71% guaranteed.
Not a bad take from Lamar.
Sean Clifford. I spoke this weekend to a group in South Carolina, and it was the first question when I was out on the golf course. It was the first question at dinner. It was the first question when it came time to make the speech. It was about him being picked in the 5th round.
I'm so surprised.
Well, yeah, I know. It's just, he always seems to be, for whatever reason, I know he's the quarterback, but the lightning rod of things. I think Jair Brown, really good pick by San Francisco. Really good. I mean, I think he's got a chance to potentially be a plug-and-play guy for them. You look at Juice Scruggs going to Houston, excellent situation. You look at the Houston roster, there are lots of holes to be filled. Juice will do just fine there. Brenton Strange, great situation along with Parker Washington down in Jacksonville. Last time I checked, their quarterback's good. Not
He
bad.
ain't half bad.
Not bad at all. And, so these guys all end up in really good situations because it's not just who picks you. It is the reason they picked you. Right? Are you, quote, what they think is the best player available? Okay. Or let's face it, best player available is not happening anymore. It does not happen anymore. Anybody who's using that expression is just making stuff up.
If it was best player available, Jalen Carter would have gone way sooner than 9.
Yes. It is best player available at the need I have or the needs I have. All right? And that's what it is these days. And that's, I think, how the draft goes at this point. So now we finally get around to talking about Sean Clifford. As I mentioned in the Rose Bowl, leading up to it, Jack Ham and I felt that he was throwing the ball harder and with more accuracy than at any point we'd seen him. And then he played the game the same way he practiced. Great job by Mike and James in terms of what was called and how the game was called, but Sean executed it. The one area I knew that he would do well, above all, in the draft lead-up, would be the interview. I knew he'd do really well at that. He's confident. He knows what he's talking about. You throw something up on a whiteboard, he can break it down for you. He can talk about the various options. He can do all of that. And you're only allowed to bring in 30 guys to your building to interview. The Packers selected him as one of the 30 guys that they brought in to talk to. And when it was done, they were blown away by how smart he is. They were blown away by his attitude, kind of person he is. And so they selected him in the 5th round. And right now it's Jordan Love. I'm trying to think that. They had another quarterback on the roster. It was a name. I mean, when I mean a name, I mean, obviously has a name, but I mean a name you would recognize.
What, like B.J. Raji, I think? Jordy Nelson, was that his name?
No.
Not Jordy Nelson. Who was there for a while? Greg Jennings, maybe?
No, I'm talking about as a quarterback.
Oh, quarterback.
I'm talking about quarterback. Who was the third quarterback for the Packers last year, I think. But he's sitting there.
No one.
Right? Jordan Love's the guy. At the moment, Sean would be the other guy. And hey, I'm thrilled for him. If you're around Sean Clifford and get a chance to talk to him for 5 minutes, you know that you got just an outstanding young man that you like being around and you root for. That's me. Now, the other part of it, I'm thrilled for Will Levis. Yeah, sure, he transferred from Penn State. Okay. A lot of people transfer in, out. But if you're around him, you get to know him a little bit. And I pointed out last week, right? I would not have picked Richardson at 4.
You would not have picked Richardson at 4, so you would not go with what Ballard and the Colts did.
No. Because I'm not a big believer in Richardson. He has the look, but he doesn't have the performance to back up the look. See, that's the difference. I know what he did at the Combine was phenomenal. What he did on Pro Day was phenomenal. But you watch the game tapes. As I mentioned a few times, I saw some of the Utah tape. It was good. Right? And I remember thinking that Utah was a distinct possibility to play in the last week of the season. So I glanced at a little bit of the Florida-Utah tape. I'm like, right, and because Florida won the game. Then I'm watching Florida play Florida State. And I said, is that the same guy? And then you watch him drop back, and he looks really good. Hey, the ball's over here, the ball's over here. I think he only completed 38% of his passes in the game. And they kept saying, but look, he's thrown 3 touchdowns. I'm like going, oh my goodness, yeah, okay. You almost felt like they were accidents. You weren't here last week, but I said on the show, one of the differences that we can relate to in these jobs, that we can relate to an NFL draft, as opposed to other jobs. When you go for a job at a company, resume, cover letter, references, hopefully you can make the cut, get into an interview, and so forth. In this job, right, it's not just sending a resume, references, cover letter, the whole thing. I said it also is accompanied by audio, or in TV, what they refer to as a reel, where they sit there and they watch your performance or they listen to your performance. And let's face it, no matter what the resume says, 9.8 times out of 10, the reason somebody gets picked is they just sound better than somebody else. It may be subjective, but they sound better than somebody else. That means everything. Well, that's the same thing with the NFL draft. You can sit there and take all the S2 tests, which I'd never heard of, and didn't even realize it was around for 8 years. I didn't even realize the S2 was around for 8 years. Only 14 teams out of 32 use it. Only 14 teams out of 32 use it. But you can take all the tests like that and combines and how high I jump and what my broad jump is and what I happen to run at a 40 and so forth. But I've got miles and miles of video that tell me whether you can play or not. Now, here's the one answer the video can't give you. Is what you're doing at this level translate comfortably to the next level? And nobody knows. Nobody knows that. As Bill O'Brien said he was talking to Jack and me about it, he says, hey, look, he says, going from high school to college is a gigantic leap. He says, going from college to the NFL is a chasm. I'm like, okay. And when you look at, but you can look, at least you've got something based on performance where you can look at it and go, guy can play. Good player. Maybe you look at the measurables and you're wondering, okay, he can really play, but do his measurables match up? Okay, let's take Skoronski, for example, first-round pick. Houston Texans?
Pete Skoronski, I think he was Titans. Yeah, he was the Titans, 11th overall.
He was the Titans, yeah. Yeah, the Titans took him before they took Will. And I thought it was a savvy move, and I'll explain that in a second. Because they ended up with both at savvy. I'll explain why. Because they did a good job of reading the board. But the knock on him is, well, I don't know if his arms are long enough to play left tackle and so forth. Okay, so those are the measurables. But can he play as a football player? There's miles of video that show he can. Whether he's guard or a tackle, he can play. So Richardson gets selected at 4. And then obviously Will goes through the torture in the green room all night long. And yes, his girlfriend is attending Penn State. Okay, just so you know. And you start looking if you look at it with a level of common sense as they're going through, you're thinking to yourself, well, they don't need one. No, they don't need one. No. And you kept going through all the teams, and you kept saying, no, unless there's a trade up. When Tennessee picked, I thought it was a maybe. And then they picked Skoronski. I says, okay, makes sense. They need, I think Lewan's no longer there, and they got.
Yeah, they released about half their team. Any notable name was the joke made. Yeah. That was released, including Taylor Lewan.
Right. So, them picking an offensive lineman made sense, but you're then starting to go through everybody. Well, they need a DB. Well, they need a tackle. Well, they need a linebacker. You start going through what they all need. Well, none of them are coming up quarterback unless there's a trade up by somebody. And then when people are trading up, like Detroit did, they're not drafting a quarterback. I mean, eventually they drafted Hooker.
Mm-hmm. Hendon.
Down the line. But, I'm like, okay. So just common sense says, especially when they got to the last 15 picks, you're like, he's not going to get picked. Because it didn't make any sense, because teams are picking best player available by need. Not best available player overall, but by need. And so when day one was over, I think I said Joey would go 1. I was on some show. I was on I was a guest on some show. I said, like, Joey will be the first player taken tonight. They said, Will Levis will go next. Tennessee will take him.
Nailed that one.
Well, but only because of the common sense of it. You're just trying to do common sense stuff at that point. Because, I don't do a mock draft. All these people do mock drafts. Some of these people have done phenomenal jobs over the years with mock drafts.
I mean,
Nobody did a good job on a mock draft this year because it was just so jumbled.
It was jumbled, but I will give credit where credit's due to Daniel Jeremiah. He was the one person who predicted the Texans would trade up to number 3 and take Stroud and Anderson back to back.
Yeah.
So that was the big home run hit.
Yeah. And I've heard that criticized. Oh, look at all the draft capital they gave up for Willie Anderson like he's a quarterback. I said, you know what? These guys need football players.
They need football players, and also you now have one of the best players on offense and defense. You got a starter on both places. You build from there. You got building blocks.
I mean, they needed to get like star level players. They got 2 of them back to back. To me, that's a successful draft. The Eagles, everybody's gaga over the Eagles. Right? Drafting is the same level as letter of intent day. You sit there and you feel good about it. Like, okay, now let's see over the next 3 to 5 years how it plays out. You don't know. You don't know. Anybody who thinks that they know how a player translates, like it's an absolute, he'll be a star when he gets to the next level. You can maybe predict that with some guys, but you almost have to just like take a wait and see attitude. And nobody wants to take a wait and see attitude about it. They got an A for their draft. Okay, on paper, I suppose. But can Carter be a great player? He can be. Can he eat his way out of the league? Could. I mean, he gained all that weight between the combine and his pro day, and he couldn't finish his pro day. Well, I think we need to show an ounce of more maturity there. Moving forward. I mean, you don't know. Then, for the first time ever, here, you want a first?
Mm-hmm. Let me hear.
Lucas Van Ness.
13, I think.
First
Packers.
Ever player selected in the first round that never started a college game.
Wild.
Mm-hmm. First player ever selected in the 88-year history of the NFL draft that never started a game. I'm talking about as a first-round pick. Wow.
Iowa, baby.
And he came out early. The next one is, let's very quickly in the NBA, I think there's like 72 players that were selected to go to the Combine in Chicago.
Yeah, something like that.
Right. Seth Lundy and Jalen Pickett are 2 of them. Not the G League Combine.
The Combine.
That's selected to the Combine. In a 60-player draft, 296 underclassmen have declared. That's in a 60-player draft. The NBA doesn't go 7 rounds.
Nope. 2.
And even if they did go 7 rounds, it would be 210 players. 296 underclassmen declared for the draft. Now, they do have a different system, which is a really good system, really smart. And I think time of the year does play a role in it. You can pull your name out of the draft by May 31st. So that 296, there are going to be a bunch of guys that will pull their name out and go back to school.
A lot of guys will say, oh, I'm declaring, but I'm retaining my eligibility to come back. And about half of them will come back, or half of them will leave and transfer somewhere else instead.
And if it's me advising them, I tell them go in every single time. Because you know what you're going to do? You're going to get in there, and you're going to have the pros tell you what they like and what you need to work on. Because they're not trying to recruit you. Oh, please become a Memphis Grizzly, please. No, they'll tell you straightforward, I like this, I like this, I like this. This is not going to translate in the league, or you really need to work on this to give yourself a shot.
Shooting 34% from 3, bump that up to 38%, and then we'll talk.
I mean, they'll talk to them about, the ability to defend, or the ability to, like, you're a heavy right-handed player. You got to do something going to your left, because they'll just, they'll eat you alive in this league. And it wouldn't bother me if every player declared and said and went in and got that evaluation. Why not? Again, they are not there to recruit you. Kyle, oh yeah, please, come on. Be a Sacramento King. Come on. You can do it. We'd love to have you. No, they look at you and say, you know what? We brought you in. This is what we like. This is why we brought you in. This is what you need to work on. And you then have a chance to go back, make the decision and go back to your team. And you can have a chance to be a better player because you had another set of eyes take a look at what you can and can't do. And I think that's important. Now, Seth and Jalen, obviously, they're in. Neither one is coming back. I mean, Seth was a 4-year player here anyway. But to have 2 Penn Staters in the NBA Combines, first time that's ever happened. And it's not the G League. Okay? There is a G League Combine. This is the NBA Combine. I think it's like 72 players, something like that.
It's 76 players. 76? And the G League has the Elite Camp, which is their combine style G League thing.
Yeah.
And by the way, I believe now only one team in the NBA will not have a G League affiliate after this season. The Trailblazers are getting one at the end of this year. So I think there's one team that does not have a G League affiliate. So more spaces for players to go to. And the G League is growing in popularity and in size and structure of it. Because I know for years the NBA G League, or the D League, what it was called for a while, was respectfully not worth a darn.
I mean, you know why it's called the G League, right?
No, I do not.
Who's the sponsor of it?
I'm guessing Gatorade.
Well done.
Wow.
That's why it's the G League.
Makes sense.
Yep. So it makes sense for every NBA team to have a G League affiliate, especially if you sign somebody to a 2-way contract, and you're allowed to sign 2 players to 2-way contracts. Where they spend some time in the G League, they spend some time up with you. It gives you some roster expansion options, especially if players get hurt, as to what you can and can't do. So that's why I'd recommend it for anybody. It's like having a minor league baseball team.
Yeah, you have an extra bunch of space. I mean,
yeah.
I know in terms of 2-way players in recent years, Duncan Robinson with Miami, Lou Dort in Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
Monte Morris in Denver, and then Alex Caruso with the Lakers.
Right.
All 2-way guys played. I know some have said, "Oh, I played overnight, or I played earlier in the day in the G League game, and then had to drive on down to the NBA game and play there as well." And I forget who it was. I think it may have been Lou Dort. It was like, "Yeah, I was playing for the G League affiliate, and then we had a game that night, the Thunder against the Lakers, and he had to go defend LeBron. He played 40 minutes in a G League game and played 40 minutes defending LeBron." Which is trial by fire.
Oh, boy. Josh Reeves was a 2-way player with Dallas, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. So it's helping. It's helping. It's giving more space for players.
Yeah.
And it's becoming a more legitimate location to go.
No question.
Because all of a sudden you have a league in the U.S. that NBA teams have a part of, can monitor, can see guys play. I know Chris Boucher, the Raptor, averaged like 7 or 8 blocks in G League games or something crazy, and then was brought up and is playing now. So it's a path.
How about the accountability of your guy Jalen Brunson yesterday?
Was not the best game.
Well, he says it was on me. He says it's my fault. I'm the one that didn't play well.
And he was right. He didn't play well. I don't know why the Knicks didn't bring up Jimmy Butler, who had one ankle in the last 5 minutes of that game, to try and do something with him. It was clear they were missing Julius Randle, though. Randle, throughout the season against the Heat, put up like 29 points a game, 11 rebounds, something crazy. And he was missed sorely when the Knicks had nothing going and Brunson couldn't cook.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll give Butler credit. The Knicks, though, had to break through and get this thing tied up. And I expect them to play, especially Brunson. Brunson's a good player. And then you got the Lakers and the Kings now, or excuse me, the Lakers and the
Warriors.
And the Warriors. So now you've got LeBron and you got Steph Curry. And, of course, that will bring up the age-old debate between the two, which is, it doesn't matter.
So calm. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't. It's like, they don't even guard each other. And then you had Celtics and Sixers. And Denver is playing Phoenix already, and Denver won the opening game.
And manhandled the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, and so again, I keep going back. I know when I talked to Calvin Booth at the end of February, and we were just talking about, I said, "How's everything going?" He's the old line he has with me all the time. He says, "Steve, I got 1.5, I'm good." And 1.5 is 15. That's Nikola Jokic. I'll tell you right now. But I said to him, I said, Cal, you know darn well that Murray has made a gigantic difference in how far you can go. He goes, he says, you're absolutely right. Murray is, they didn't have him at all last year. He got hurt. He hurt his knee. And I felt that affected their chances of advancing deep. By having Murray back and he's playing at a high level, they have a chance to advance deep.
He said he hated the nickname, but Bubble Murray he put up multiple 40-point games. Yeah. He led them to the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah.
And they ran into this Lakers team, or the Lakers team.
Yeah.
So.
And then what does home ice mean in the Stanley Cup playoffs?
Diddly squat, is that the answer you're looking for?
The Bruins won 65 games. You want to know how many games they lost at home in the regular season?
Guessing the answer is single digits.
4.
Yeah.
You want to know how many home games they lost in this series? 3.
Crazy. The best regular season team in NHL history.
Yep.
And they lost in Game 7 in overtime.
Had the lead with a minute to play.
And also had a 3-1 series lead, if I'm not mistaken.
3-1 series lead, and then led Game 7 with a minute to play. Done. Colorado Avalanche, defending Stanley Cup champions. Seattle Kraken, second year of existence. Kraken go into Denver, win. Wow.
Not half bad.
All I'll say is that a lot of things have opened up dramatically for the Edmonton Oilers. I'm honest. The Oilers really can't defend. What makes their games entertaining is that it's 5-4 and we got 10 minutes to go. McDavid's great. Draisaitl's great. The Kane's great. They got a lot of great offensive players. Defensively, and when it comes to goal, no. Skinner, no. Nice try. Maybe he needs more help in front, but no. And then you get the Devils and the Rangers tonight, Game 7.
The last game of round 1.
And it's in New Jersey. The Rangers did the impossible and won at home.
I know. Who wins at home anymore?
Nobody.
Jeez.
Seems like nobody does. You work all season long to get home court, home ice. And then you get in these situations, you look around and going, okay.
Well, it's like there's some weird assumption that because a team is great at home or terrible on the road in any sport now, it's like that's the result they're going to get. Like the Warriors. Warriors couldn't win a road game to save their lives.
No, they were not.
And then there was also the fact that, the Warriors also, like, for 19 straight series have won a road game.
Yeah.
And then they won 2 against the Kings.
They were not a good road team. They were a great home team all year.
But terrible on the road.
At Chase, they've been tremendous, which got them back in the series, really.
I mean, they lost a game at home, though.
Yeah.
They lost one at home.
Yeah, they did. And, they lost when they could have clinched it.
Yeah.
I'll go back to the World Series. I feel like in football, fan bases make a huge difference in that the offense comes out there for the opposing team and they have to do silent counts. It takes away from comfort level. It takes away from communication. It does all of that. So it makes a huge impact. I feel like in college basketball it just makes an impact because, look, it's great being on your court, your baskets, the whole deal. But in the pros, no. The one that cracked me up during the fall was Phillies fans really believed that they were intimidating opposing teams. I mean, I'm glad you feel that way, but like, I don't recall, like, are you standing next to them when they pitch? Are you standing next to them when they hit? No, they're kind of just looking at the ball and listen to this play. Well, yeah, of course, listen to the play. It's a great moment, the whole thing. But did it have anything to do with? No. I remember the World Series. Because the Phillies won a game down in Houston. Oh, you're going to come back to Philadelphia. The Astros won 2 out of 3. Right. They're looking around going, yeah, okay, great. So that's nice. They're loud. It doesn't. Yeah, we've got home ice. Unless they're down there and they're checking you, okay, they're all behind the glass. They can't do anything.
The only time you've ever seen it, or at least this year, matter was the Knicks against the Cavs. But that's a young team. It's a team that hasn't been there.
But they beat them in Cleveland.
Yeah. But that's the only time it works in pro sports. Is you said football. Yeah, football is difficult. I think soccer teams, because their crowds are just different. And then when you're a young team going on the road to a place like Madison Square Garden, where Knicks fans are psychotic.
I think college basketball, college football, home court, home field is really, it's big. Home field in football, again, you have to change what you're doing as opposed to being at home. See, that's why I always felt during the pandemic was interesting, because
there was no
crowds. None of that. You're up there changing plays in the line of scrimmage. Hey, guys. I mean, Jack and I could hear it. All right. We're at Michigan. We're at Nebraska. We can hear it. Which means if we could hear it, all the other players could hear it. Okay? Normal game, you'd have to use silent count, hand signals, something. All right? There's a way you have to play a road game because of the noise. But baseball, we're going to intimidate the Astros. Here in the back, exactly what way you're going to do? How are you going to do that? By chanting a guy's name? We got in his head. There's a drive. Oh, I don't think so.
In the NBA, we're getting in Steph Curry's head. Oh, now he's shouting like the bean.
I don't think so.
Whoopsie.
You'd be amazed. You know what the biggest difference is in games?
What would it be?
Talent. All right. So
wow, what a statement.
But that's
out of left field, Steve.
But am I wrong?
You're not wrong. Usually talent wins out. That's just how it is.
Yeah. Who's the best player in the court in the Warriors Kings series?
Steph.
Yeah. All right. There you go. Okay. Now Toronto's going to play Florida. Okay. During COVID, as I mentioned, Jack and I were home and away. Basketball, we did the non-con home and away, but then we got to the conference and I had to do the road games here. Okay. Then finally, after just 2.5 months of that torture, all the restrictions were lifted. Well, the Toronto Blue Jays and the Maple Leafs, again, you're talking about Canada. So different way of doing things, different laws, different restrictions. The Jays and the Maple Leafs have been keeping their radio crews at home calling the road games. So they get to the Stanley Cup playoffs. Radio play-by-play voice Joe Bowen talked about the challenges of calling games remotely. And he blamed having only the TV feed for why he initially identified the incorrect score of the team's game or series-winning goal, which is the first time they've advanced since 2004. And today they released a statement. Joe Bowen and Jim Ralph will be on the road for Toronto's second-round series with Florida.
Good.
The team and its broadcast partners will have the radio broadcast crew covering the action in person, both home and on the road, beginning on Tuesday. They just looked around and said, we got to do this. They said the fan programming director, Nelson Millman, estimated the cost of sending the radio broadcasters on the road for a series to be $10,000 in Canadian. That's $7,400 in U.S. dollars. He described that price as not prohibitive. Okay, that's why you have a sales staff.
And you pay the players how much money?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is why you have a sales staff. They sell commercials on these things. Like, there are 2 intermissions. Load them up.
2 intermissions and a pregame and a postgame.
Yep, load it up. He said it's going to be worthwhile beyond improved calls to the games with on-locations broadcasters able to make guest appearances from the road across stations as well. Plus, look, they get to do in-person interviews, go to the morning skate, all that stuff. A lot of public pressure forced them to do this.
As a broadcaster, if I can ask, what are your thoughts on the whole broadcasting from a different location for a game dealio? I guess is the best way to put that.
Okay. Let's take the broadcasters out of it for a moment. Okay? Because broadcasts are all about the fans. I always tell people that it's the people down in front of us, the players, the coaches. They're doing all the hard work. I said, we're just up there talking about it. But they're the ones doing all that. They're the ones making the great plays. We talk about Sean Clifford and touchdown passes in the Rose Bowl, or Singleton's long run. Who did all the work? The offensive line, Singleton, James, Mike, Phil, Ty, right? All of them, all right, did all the hard work. We had the glory of calling it. Okay? But the reason you have broadcasts, especially team broadcasts, is for the fans. It's all for the fans. So I'm sitting there I talked about the Rose Bowl in practice. Well, we can relate that to the fans on the broadcast, that in watching him, Sean Clifford, play practice on Friday and then continue it on Saturday, Sunday, especially more Sunday than Saturday's was more of a walkthrough before the Rose Bowl. But watching him on Friday and Sunday, were we surprised by what we saw? No. And we were able to explain to the fans why, because we were around it. The ability to, I'll give you the pregame show. The first question I asked in the Rose Bowl pregame show to James was about not just the quarterback, I said, which is an obvious person that has to recognize cover zero, because Utah runs a fair amount of it. I said, how important is it for the other 10 players to recognize cover zero? Or what's the importance of the other players recognizing cover zero? Well, in the Singleton play, what were they in? It wasn't a pass play, but what were they in? Cover zero, which meant at that point he had to be not 3 levels, 2, because he came up so far. There were only 2 levels. Once he gets past the second level, there was nobody back there, right? But that's why being there is important, because you get a feel as to what they're doing and why they're thinking it. And then you can relate it. And then something happens, guy gets hurt, I don't care which team, and you're looking over at the bench saying, okay, what's he doing? Okay, he's on the bike. All right, he's on the bike. All right. Looks like he's running around. No, he's gone into the tent. Haven't seen him for a while. All right. Okay, he's popped out of the tent. Look at, those are all things that you can see, right? Substitutions, people coming in the game with all the sub packages, going out. Okay, Jack may be talking. That's my job. I'm now listening to what he's saying. And again, because he's the key guy in the whole broadcast. I mean, he really is. But I'm looking at, okay, who's in? Okay, they switched up the running back. They brought in a slot receiver. They took out one of the tight ends. Because that way the fan knows who's out there. Basketball, same thing. you're going to practice getting a feel for, let's take Cam Winter. Cam Winter. Unless you're around it every day, he was trying to do things within the structure of the offense, which meant he was taking a lot of threes. When he was more of a get me to that 15 to 18-foot spot and I can hit it or I can drive to the bucket. And the fact that Micah told him, hey, look, you know what? Your game's a little different than everybody else's. You feel comfortable shooting threes, go ahead. He says, but, you want to drive and get some twos? You want to pull up in the lane and get like those 15 to 18-foot twos? He said, do it. He said, that way you're comfortable doing what you do. And that opened the floodgates for the rest of the season. But unless you're around it, you're at a shoot-around on the road. You're at, right, what they're thinking going in, where you can then relate that to the fans on the broadcast, that there's no way you can do that from a studio. You can't do that. And it's your job to give the fan as much information or tidbits beyond stats, right, that makes the game a better experience for them. Dick Girardi does a brilliant job of getting the fans a better experience by seeing the whole floor. Jack sees the whole field. And you do this for the fans, that you have an analyst that sees the whole field and why or why not something in its ability to work. Dick, why or why not in its ability to work? What kept it from working? Why did it work? Right? You can't do that, when you're just locked in on a certain square. Now, I give these guys credit for doing the best they can, but there's a reason that you're there. You're the eyes. You're sent to be the eyes for the people who couldn't be there. It's the best answer I have.
It's a pretty darn good answer. It's almost like you do this broadcasting thing. It's almost like you're one of them.
But that's, but again, Jack and Dick will tell you that, now Jack and I didn't have to do it that way, but if we had to, if you're confined, like for Dick, he just couldn't give the wide perspective. There are times that something will happen, and Dick will say, he says he's open in the corner at the other end. And they'll get the ball like fire it deep down, and he's got it. They could see the play, right? And it just makes a big difference. We're going to get Dick on Friday's show, by the way, to talk about the Kentucky Derby. It's that time.
Oof, it's that time of the year.
It's the first Saturday in May, my man. So we will have the great one on to talk about that. And that's what makes it. We can talk about make it about the broadcasters, but did I once talk about us? It was all about like the ability of what we do for the benefit of the fans. They're the most important component in the whole thing. That's why you do it, especially when you're the ones that are around the team all the time. Yeah, I think people want, quote, their broadcasters to really know a lot about their team, pros and cons. Like a Jameel Brown comes in the game. Okay. Well, because we're around it all the time, we can talk about his ability as a shooter, about his length, how he's come along during the course of the season, how he's put on 10 to 15 pounds of muscle since he got on campus, things like that. Right? The blue-white game, we could talk about certain players, and Tony Rojas is a good example. Oh, look at the weight. Well, he's 220. He was at least 2 weeks ago. He's 227. Okay, right. And these are little things that not every fan wants to know, but there's a segment of fans that want to know, and that segment of fans that are like, oh, really? Okay, but there's stuff they want to know. Each segment wants to know something, and if you're around it, you have a better chance of being able to tell that part of the story to them. So that's how I look at it. I know, again, Toronto, because it's Canada, it's different. in terms of laws, structure, maybe because of mandates, they developed a different attitude. I don't know. Because obviously I haven't been up there. But yeah. Then ABC, during the Heat Knicks game, they showed some stock footage of New York City.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see what was in the background?
I believe, was it the Twin Towers? Were they in the background?
Yep.
Yeah, not the best.
You couldn't have sent a camera crew out?
One would think you have some New York City footage that is more recent. One would think.
Yeah, but you couldn't have sent a crew out that morning? Hey, we need a few shots of the city. Okay.
Or asked any broadcast as of late from MSG, hey, do you have some stock footage of the Knicks?
Yeah.
Real simple stuff. Wasn't Mike? I think Mike Breen was on the call. Could have just said, hey, do you have a connection that has some stock footage? Or simple stuff? I think there's cameras outside of MSG. They could have just asked for the feed.
I know. Look, you're ABC. Get in the WABC chopper, go up, take some stock footage, bring it back. We got 10 minutes. We're good.
Just ridiculous.
I know. You sit back and say, I don't know. Who's running this show? Who came up with that idea?
Somehow, I'm going to blame it on James Dolan. It's just his fault. That's how it works.
What, as a fan, what do you think of him?
What do I think of Jim Dolan?
Right. No, I'm serious. I mean, as a fan, you're not going to know him personally, but I mean, do you have an opinion on him? Or it seems like everybody in New York does.
Everyone does, because it's all the same. It's the same opinion. It has been for years. It's that he does not get what being a fan is. That doesn't make a lot of sense to people when they hear that out loud, but I look at, as a Saints fan, the Bensons, Tom and now Gail Benson.
Mm-hmm.
Gail is ingrained in New Orleans. Yeah. Everyone knows her as Miss Benson. She loves the Saints. She goes to every game, all these things, and she interacts with the fans. That's what someone wants in an owner of a team. Right. Someone who's there sometimes to chat and just understand where fans come from.
Yeah.
And then you've got James Dolan, who kicks out one of the greatest players in Knicks history, kicks Oakley out of the arena.
Yeah.
He basically willingly wants Carmelo Anthony gone. He is cool with Phil Jackson burning the bridge there after a few years of Melo and whatever happening. He throws out fans for saying that he's bad at his job, when if he's throwing them out for that, I wonder how many people he's blocked on Twitter or Instagram.
Yeah.
He just isn't, he doesn't get it. And he's so caught in his world of like, oh, I need my guys here because they're the best. When it's proven his guys aren't the best.
Right.
Leon Rose is not one of his guys, but Leon Rose has figured it out how to do it and deal with James Dolan and his sideshow all the time.
Right.
Like, it's the same thing with the Cowboys and Jerry Jones. Like, he's just, it's, you don't love the guy because he does these crazy things.
It's interesting. He is an owner, but he's the GM.
Yeah.
Talking about Jerry Jones, not James Dolan. And it's like, okay. Transfer portal. Transfer portal for football for the spring edition closed down yesterday. That doesn't mean today or tomorrow you will, that's it, you won't hear any more names? No, because there's a 48-hour period in terms of finally when it gets posted. Sometimes it gets posted quickly. Other times it takes as much as 24 to 40 hours to post. So you may see some names across the country show up today. You may see some names across the country show up today. Men's basketball closes May 11th, by the way, if you're wondering. What happened in Michigan State was one of those kind of take you back moments. Like, Really? Their quarterback, Peyton Thorne, and their leading receiver, Keon Coleman, both put their names in the transfer portal yesterday. And I'm sitting back and saying, did Thorne think he was going to get beaten out at Michigan State? And if so, by whom? I pretty much thought that baby was his, like without any questions from 30,000 feet. And Coleman's a big physical, like get the ball at the high point receiver. And it's one of the reasons why he did play some basketball at Michigan State, because he has that ability to be a good rebounder, go up, get the ball at a high point, do things like that. I saw that yesterday. I was sitting in the Charleston airport, and I'm looking at the going, okay, not what I expected today.
Gotta love the transfer portal. Everyone's favorite. This happens, a week after Prime Time loses 15 players to the portal on the spot?
No, he didn't lose 51 players.
He booted 15 players out. My bad. Sorry.
Essentially 51 players felt unwanted.
Yeah, he said he came in with his Gucci bag, and if you were not going to be in the Gucci bag, you had to leave, and they left.
No.
Oh.
You must not understand brands. He said Louis.
Sorry, Louis. My bad.
Which is Louis Vuitton.
My bad. I'm sorry. I am not accustomed to discussing Louis Vuitton or Gucci or Prada. It's not my area of expertise.
I understand, but I remember the quote. And I had to then find out from somebody what it meant. And it stuck with me.
It's a heck of a quote to come out with.
I was like, okay. When he said it, I thought, okay, I don't quite know what that means. So I asked somebody, I said, oh, okay. Okay, I got it. I've heard of Louis Vuitton. That's good. I've heard of Prada. I've heard of Gucci. But yes, it was Louis Vuitton, just so you know.
Yeah.
As you can tell by how I dress.
You're dripped out in Louis.
I am no fashion expert, that's for sure. All right. Back tomorrow. Just one quick question before we leave.
Mm-hmm.
Why would anybody tamper when it comes to Jonathan Gannon? All right. Well,
wow.
I mean, seriously. Like, you can't wait an hour?
And they had to trade, like a 7th round pick?
I'm sorry. Okay. I would tamper to get Lombardi. Okay. Okay. Bill Walsh. Belichick. Okay. I would tamper to do that. Jonathan Gannon, I'll call you in a week. We're good.
It's out there. It's out there.
On Seven Mountains Media.
And thanks for tuning in to Sports Talk with Steve Jones, a Seven Mountains Media production. Check back daily for all the latest sports news just like this. And